Wow. Madonna, you fill out. We run out of seats.
Yeah, I'm ready. That seat there is open. Are you blocking the door, Anna? Yeah, you're the guard. Oh, am I in the way? Maybe.
No, the camera is here.
No, to advance the slides. No, Gabrielle's going to advance the slides.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's
The
on.
battery is new.
It's on. It's okay, but just not possible. But anyway, no worries.
Okay. Who's introducing me?
Actually,
All right.
pessoal, vamos começar? Tawana, tá aí para. O pessoal está na reunião já? Boa tarde, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce us all
Okay.
to Professor Madonna. She's going to be the speaker today. But before we go there, we have a tradition here that we have some other introduction. Some good news by Professor Eduardo, some news.
We all share the good news of the week.
Yes, and just 5 minutes before we go ahead.
Then hello everybody. I have a few good news. That last week we launched the Center of Excellence with the visit of Professor Hartmann from Hanover. I was in Uberlândia giving a talk to the prosecutor's office in Procon on Friday. Our group was also on the special from TV Record on animal intelligence, and I'm really grateful to André, José Roberto, Tawana, Marcia, for the work. Thank you very much. We also did 2 days at the animal shelter with help with Gabriel and Nana, and also people from Madonna Zero. Thank you very much. Yesterday, we received the school Prospero Grisi 40 kids for the and organized by Marcia in the office of the campus. Then we had 40 kids celebrating the World Day of the Water, and we have also planting 40 peas. Yesterday we said goodbye. Where is Marcela? Everybody says clap. Hello, Marcela. Marcela is leaving, and yesterday had an amazing celebration with the contribution of Dennis, Gabriel, and C. Very nice. Well done, everybody. And I'm delighted to tell you that we'll be advertising this afternoon 2 postdoctoral positions. Be attentive. We have 2 positions to work on the area of sustainability, biodiversity, risk of zoonotic disease. And I leave them to talk about you, Madonna. Thank you. And also, we are delighted to have, and Madonna is an amazing singer. She impresses a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, wait, don't extend the introduction. She introduced herself also. That's a pleasure. I'll give you the floor for you.
Okay.
Presentation, please give the people a little bit about yourself.
All right.
Otherwise, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for all of you for coming, and thank you for my workshop pal for coming to the presentation as well. My name is Madonna Benjamin. I am a veterinarian. I have a master's in animal welfare that if you had time, Adrelda would tell you about for hours and hours. I'm also board certified in the American College of Animal Welfare. That's fairly recent. and very, very proud of that ability. I'm an associate professor at Michigan State University. I've been there for 10 years. Before that, I had my own animal or swine practice. I'm a swine veterinarian. I had my own practice, and prior to that, I did research for a large company, Elanco Animal Health, and most of my research there was on transport and swine handling. It's come a long way, the welfare aspect. When Adraldo and I were first working on it, if we talked about welfare, the farmers had put their hands over their wallet because they thought it was going to cost them too much money to have welfare. But as we move forward, the idea is that we demonstrate the value all the way through the chain. So what I wanted to visit with you about, because my experience is not as an engineer, as is Raphael's, where I lost that there, and the group of engineers here, but my experience is what I refer to as a domain expert. We are people who are working with animals. We recognize the value that can come out of precision livestock farming, and then we need the assistance of the engineers to write code and develop algorithms or set up the infrastructure and the equipment to capture information. But it is our responsibility as domain experts to help determine the value proposition. It's all fine to have, images of a specific something or other, but unless it has a value proposition, Dennis's work has a value proposition as far as saving lives, and it is to the police and others. And I just want to thank all of you who have received me. Tiago, we talked yesterday. Anna, we talked. Adraldo set aside 7 hours of talking. I couldn't believe it. We got through it. And I loved all of your projects and the diversity of the projects, and I take back ideas. But before I go any further, could you advance the slide? Okay, so an outline, an introduction of my own team, describing precision livestock farming and commercial applications. I can't see maybe I'll move over here. What I think we'll need to do to move forward, domain experts, thank you, and examples of my own experience. And then I'd like to finish up with data rights, traceability, and IP. And Adraldo asked me to talk a little bit about this. So this next slide will help you understand why. So in 2016, and I'll explain why I wanted to do this, I'll explain that later. But in 2016, I started into computer vision because I believed that I could see things, but I didn't think that many of the stock people could see things. I had 12 years in practice, and I could train someone to identify that a sow was lame based on toe tapping, but that was my intuition. It may not have been theirs, and so I thought it was really, really important. So with that, I developed something that's called the SIM kit. And what it is, it's a three-dimensional camera, 3D camera, and it's a top view system. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. It's a top view system. And the idea is that I want to capture information of the animals while they're moving. I'm enough of a domain expert, I'm enough of a veterinarian that if I try to make every sow get into a weigh crate, I'm just going to piss off the farmer and the sow. So there's no sense in doing that. The farmer said to us, don't disrupt our flow of work. So what we decided is we're going to have sows walk under as they would normally walk under on their way to the room where they'll farrow and on their way out after they've weaned piglets. The university then came to me and said, we have an infrastructure in place and we want you to have a startup company. And of course, the startup company is worth millions. No, it's not, because maybe someday, but there's a 5% chance of that, right? 0 times millions is still 0. But what it does is it really points out the fact that what we develop after the startup, within the startup, is intellectual property. So by rights, I want to tell you that I may have a conflict of interest with something that you're doing. So when I spoke with Raphael and Luciana, we said that right up front. I may have a conflict, and if there's any conflict, I will let you know before we even get started. And so they shared their ideas, and there's no conflict with what we're doing. What we're doing is very specific. So I wanted to talk, one, it's by law, I have to tell you that. And two, I think it's really, really important to maybe discuss it after. This is our team. That's snow. There's lots of snow, and we're so used to snow, we take our pictures in the snow. And this is just before we won an award from the university. We had the Innovation Award of the Year, which was really cool from Michigan State. It kind of still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. So this is Dr. Daniel Morris, who is a computer engineer, primarily with automotive self-driving cars. You know him? Yeah. Oh, okay. And this is Michael Lavagnino. He is a mechanical engineer. And this is the whiz kid who made the algorithm and the sim kit, and he's now employed by General Motors. So taking a step back, precision livestock farming, it's called many names: precision management, digital, Internet of Things, but in essence, this is explosive. And I don't need to tell you, but I showed this slide to my colleagues at the College of Veterinary Medicine, and they were so surprised. If we do a Google Scholar search since 2019, there are over 20,000 publications and patents. So, and that's on the, and what you won't find is you won't find the work that's being done by Merck, or you won't find the work that's being done by Zoetis, because that's all under intellectual property. But the work that you're doing feeds this. Can you imagine the force that's coming forward? And the criticism that we had of precision livestock farming, even 4 years ago, as in it'll never work, we can't combine the sensors. I just asked Raphael that 2 days ago. Can we combine the sensors? Absolutely, we can combine the sensors. And so we're making a better story. We're making a proposal, a value proposition to the industry. Okay, so the role of precision livestock is data and information. I'd like to say it's animal welfare, and there are opportunities for animal welfare, but what's really going to drive this is that to improve efficiency and productivity. There's intense cost control. We know that we're not going to put a $2 tag on every broiler bird. 30 million broiler birds or 600 million broiler birds and put a $2 tag on their leg, it's not going to happen. Although it may have happened in your research lab, it's not going to happen in the world. And the other aspect is that, you know, we wanted individual identity of animals. The first one who gets there wins the big prize, because we know that the slaughter plants don't want to pull off tags. We know that farmers don't want to lose $2 per animal for the cost of a tag. So there's intense cost of cost control. The opportunities are to improve operations and executions if we don't have to duplicate the work, if we can attract young people, smart people into agriculture, into barns, because they're doing something where they're not just pushing a broom or something like that. They're using their minds. They're going to have to manage their margins. So anything that they bring in has to show a return to investment, and things that are brought it, there'll be a copy of this if you want it. And anything that is brought in should show durability. Maintain animal and environmental sustainable productivity. I kind of looped sustainability and welfare into one. Much to your chagrin. Oh, I have to thank Adraldo and Marcia there. Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you so much for inviting me. Sorry. Obrigada. and then manage operating risk, and then do fewer things better. In many of the farms, we still have farmers who are cleaning up the feed and not able to watch the animals. Plus, we have time frames. Plus, we have people who are fatigued. If you think about artificial insemination, you have 3,000 sows, and they're coming into estrus by I think the research is after the 20th sow, the technician becomes tired of observing. So you probably have seen this before. You know, the sensors, whether they're microphones, cameras, and I don't have to talk to you about them, thermometers, the ventilation. And the idea is that there's a software, it goes into a control system, it also provides information, and then the alarm system. So that's the interface. And I'll talk just a little bit about interface. The interface is so important. What does your interface offer to the one who's receiving it, whether it's the farmer or the transporter? And then early warnings. If there's too many early warnings, I was in a barn, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, beep, 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 beep. And I looked at the manager, I said, the alarm's going off. He said, it's always going off. So what's the value in that if the alarm's always going off? And then the dashboard. What's easy to read? Sometimes, you know, graphs look great, but what's it telling us? So sensor applications, again, we probably don't have to tell you much about it. There's accelerometer data, facial and body recognition, very similar. And thank you, Gabrielle, for picking me up at the airport and telling me about your project. The vocalization data. I was in a barn and they were using the sound talk, so that's the vocalization, and the coughing, and it recognizes that pigs were coughing in one pen and not at the end pen. And I said to the farmer, I said, so what does that tell you? What do you do? He said, I don't know. It's just that's a red light and that's a green light. So there's still, thank you for the water, still lots of opportunity. Biometric, inventory counting. So many pig producers, especially when they're shipping little piglets, they want to know how many pigs went through, because you've probably seen them. Some go this way, some go that way. How are you going to count them all? And counting is still really important for the packing plant and for producers. Olfactory breath analysis data. There's some Doppler information I didn't include in here, but that's the Doppler information is showing nice work on respiration rate and health. And then the other is distribution of labor. So as you know, what we want to do is we have the opportunity to detect, react, and then hopefully to predict. A lot of the tools right now are still at detect and react, and the opportunities are to predict. So does anyone know who this woman is? Yes, Temple Grandin. She was in this room. She is fabulous. Temple, I met Temple, I was in my mid-20s, and she just rocked my world. At the time, I didn't realize that pigs were sentient beings, and she shifted all of that. And that's when I wanted to become more involved. But here we have someone who looks at things differently, and that's really what we want. We want the computers to look at things differently than what we do. We want the computer to see what we see, but we want it to analyze what's different. So anyone pick up what's different? The red X. You might be slightly autistic. That's a joke. That's what that's what Temple said. Yeah, Marcia picked up on it, right? Yeah, maybe it's a good thing. So the point in that is that we all saw the same thing, but we're asking the computer to see it differently, a second pair of eyes for computer vision, or the sensory. So what if we could look through things at a different lens? you've probably seen lots of this with the cow counters, and whether they use it using a classifier or they use it with ellipsoid. This is work that, this is only 4 years old. Look how far you've come, right? This is work. Initial work by Cainthus. If you go to their website, they no longer have this. Ever Ag purchased Cainthus, and now they're using this type of information for marketing as part of the whole value chain. And whether they're going to use it to tell a story about the percentage of cows that are eating at the bunk, or how many cows actually have access to a place to lie down, or if they're going to use it for, I'm looking at this cow here. Oh, that's fine. Okay, this isn't working. But anyway, I'm looking at this cow here. And is she standing without a place? Ah, nice. Nice, yeah. Is she standing without a place because she doesn't have a place to lie down? Because we know that lame cows need, if you have more lame cows, you need more spaces to lie down. So we have the right ratio. I'm not sure about that. This is, I don't think I have the movie, but of course this is tracking pigs in the barn. And they're using a YOLO format. So the off-the-shelf programs make it so much easier. I will tell you that when we developed our patents, we did not use any off-the-shelf. We couldn't. So therein lies the opportunity for building your own algorithms. But certainly you can test the idea using off-the-shelf programs. Tawana showed me the LEAP program for pose estimation. That's really cool. And lameness in cattle. I mean, it's not just top down looking at lameness for cattle. It's also trying to look at things differently. How do we demonstrate a cow with lameness? And so there are different ways, you know, looking at the back and the depth. But this researcher looked at the swing of the leg, because that's really important. Can I use your purse, Marcia?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. So if I'm a cow or a sow walking, and I can't show everyone, but if my udder is full, I'm gonna walk differently than I would if before I freshen. So therein lies the opportunity. Therein lies the opportunity for ground truth. Is she lame, or is she just walking differently than what you trained your set on? Okay, so what if we could hear disease and locate? There's a sound talks. We won't go through that, but that was developed out of the UK. I'm just Thomas Norton and his group. But this is the essence of it. Of course, it's a sound analysis and it's a decision tree. The digital or the audio, and it's a bioacoustic sensor. It tells whether it's normal, it's stressed, or there's a disease cough. And here's the decision tree. It's classification, then diagnosis, and location. But as I pointed out, in the scenario that I saw it, they still had the red light, but the farmer didn't know what to do with it. And there's another opportunity too. In the United States, all medically important medication will have to go through a veterinary prescription. And that's a big shift to our small producers, our smaller producers, because they used to be able to go to the store and buy penicillin off the counter and then inject it into a pig or treat animals. Until 2017, they used to be able to put antibiotics in the feed at a lower level than the label, but that is no longer allowed. So the ability to connect with the veterinarian or whoever's doing the prescription is going to be really important. From a labor perspective, this is a program called Pig Flow, and I'm so impressed with it. What they did is they took a format that's used in hospitals. So in hospitals, you have nurses coming off, nurses coming on. You have, I don't know if you have a high turnover, but certainly in pig barns, there's a high turnover. And so people really didn't know what they were supposed to do. What the pig flow does is it identifies the tasks and then it allocates people to the task. So let's say in the hospital, someone had an accident that they weren't planning on, or there was a crisis. They would bring more nurses or more doctors to address that right then, and then disperse the group again. So that's what they're doing here. One of the really cool things that I think is the ability for everyone to share the load. It's no longer, well, it's not my job, right? Everyone shares the load. And when I walk into the barns, there's a different aura. You guys know what aura is? There's a different atmosphere. There's a sense of really coming together for the same purpose. The app also allows for Google Translate. So when you have a Hispanic to English worker ratio that's 9-2 or something like that, you no longer have that the Spanish or the Hispanic against the English. You now have people who can communicate and talk, plus they can see what they need to do. And the manager, I don't think he gets out of the office anymore. But these barns are huge, right? You can easily walk miles just to get from one end of the barn to the other. So I really, really like the pig flow. Plus it reduces the repetition. It puts people where they're supposed to be, and they're not repeating. This is a couple of, it's 1 Cup AI, if you have a chance. And we have the Adobe PDF for you. You're welcome to have that and then access the link. 1 Cup AI is to improve labor and the detection and prediction. And then there's a Sense Lab, which does something very similar with beef cattle. So and Sense Lab was purchased by Merck, and Allflex was purchased by Merck. We'll talk a little bit about that. I just wanted to point out, some fabulous work, and there's no way I had enough time to take a clip of everyone's work that's being done, but I wanted to just bring it up, that your work is contributing greatly to the world of PLF. Gabrielle, there's yours. I told you I found it. And Dennis, this system here, it's great work. So if we think about pillars to connect for commercial adoption, because that's really what I'm referring to, because we're domain experts, we need accurate and cost-effective sensors. We need the ability to provide prediction and estimates that have minimal false alarms. And then we need that interface to transition data to usable information. So even in your lab, if you show 95 or 96%, what is that like in the field? And remembering you're getting a correlation based on what you measure. What else is there out there? And I showed you based on the purse, that kind of skews the alarms and changes it. So with sensors, and then we have the opportunity for raw data. I'm so excited right now. My storage capacity is at its maximum. We can't even process it anything more. And I think I have 32 terabytes for the sows that we collected, and some of them we put in archive. And it's just, I'm excited about the opportunities for storage and improving storage. And Saulo and I learned a little bit about that. But there's just a wonderful opportunity in science that really needs attention for helping with storage and uploading information. There's a lot of people that believe that farms won't put in Wi-Fi or internet for putting information into the clouds. I'll disagree. If they're willing to spend $200,000 on a tractor, most of them will put $3,000 into a Wi-Fi system so that this information, but you have to show the value proposition to do that. So we process data and unused data, but what goes back is the ground truth. And you gave me the opportunity to ask the question, what's your ground truth? What's your ground truth? And what are the caveats behind that? And that's where we can come in and help identify that. So Domain expert is a subject matter expert, a person with special knowledge or skills in a particular area, a person extremely familiar with a given group of users and their work habits because they belong to a group. So you could call it stakeholders. But everyone comes to the meetings and they talk the same talk. Who are the domain experts? They're veterinarians, farmers, transporters, anyone who's a geneticist, accountants. It was nice talking with Marco today earlier about the business aspect, business developers, and then also the retailers, because they know what they want in their product based on what their consumer wants. I like this stick. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So this is a schematic that we did on blockchain. We're familiar with blockchain. Yeah, so it's a traceability all the way through. And I just wanted to share that with you. But this slide is 2 years old, and we received a lot of attention for it. We put it through our extension newsletter, and we had all kinds of calls about it, and we didn't know much more than other than what we put on the slide. And now it's really, really commonplace. Most people are very well aware of it. So why did I get involved? I got involved because I am a domain expert. I thought I was just a veterinarian, but now I have a better title that I give myself. And what happened is I was with Elanco Animal Health for 10 years, and my area was transport. And when I started my practice, I was shocked on how many sows were dying. And we tried different intervention programs, et cetera, on the barns, but the sows were dying. And this is work that was published, Dr. Clayton Johnson with Carthage, a very large system. But this is only since 2015 to 2017, and it's on a constant trajectory. And there's a number of reasons for it. The incidence of prolapse, uterine prolapse, is blown off the wall. And once a sow prolapses, she has no value. She has to be euthanized. So you can imagine you have a $500 animal that now has no value. So what are the reasons? So this is on the board of my lab. 17,000 sows in Canada and the United States will die this week. That's what gets me up, or gets me out of bed, is that I want to make a difference, however I can, to reduce the mortality. Why are sows dying? Well, over 50% of it is we don't know. And unknown just means this is the classifier that the herdsmen or the stock people give to the sow. They look at her and they say, oh, she was found dead. We don't know why she died. There's also lameness. Well, detection of lameness. That is very subjective. And another one is body condition, which to me is sow topology. It's the way she loses or gains weight at different periods of her production. So I decided I would focus on lameness and body condition. There are ways to measure body condition. What we used as our ground truth, and I'm not happy with it, and I'll explain why, is we use what's called a caliper. And this caliper measures the width of the sow. So it's really a protractor. All the engineers will, Anyway, it's a protractor. And if they're very fat, the protractor is like this. And if they're very thin, it's like this. And it's over the spine at the last rib. Here's the newest one. I mean, this one is even more coarse than the other one. At least this one had individual digits. But the farmers don't use the individual digits. And what happens with the caliper is if you're short like me, 5'4", and the sow is in a 7-foot crate and she moves up, then my arms are only going to reach so far, unless I'm going to climb in. And I'm not going to climb in for 3,000 sows, right? So what happens is that the caliper is supposed to be on the last rib, but it ends up somewhere over the rump or the tail and the score. You could also use ultrasound, and there's improvements in ultrasound, and there's also the fatometer. And then there's the observation. But again, those are subjective. So what we did is we used the caliper, and what we found is, this is just on a small sample, and the The caliper is a small part of it. As I mentioned, it's what we're using as a ground truth. And but this was as an aside. What we noticed, I don't know if this, oh, there we go. If we, this says lame. So of the sows that were less than a 12, and 12 was the median. So 12 was the mean of the scores. So the scores range from 6 to 20. 12 was the median of all the sows that we scored. And of this subset, what we notice is that red is all the sows that are less than, and this is the proportion of sows that were lame. So this doesn't mean cause and effect, but what it does is it suggests proportion. So what we did is, as I mentioned, I wanted to be able to have sows coming and going. So we set it up as a top view, and we have sows walking either into gestation or into farrowing, but we're able to catch them. And the idea is to do topological mapping. We started out with the Microsoft Connect 2, time of flight. Then we went to the RealSense, and they are liars. And now we're using the Azure Connect. They say that they have very good accuracy, and they don't. So the idea behind it is the value proposition, ideally, would be selection of highly productive sows. Ultimately, animal recognition. Right now, we put the numbers on the sows, and the computer recognizes the OCR. A prediction and early identification of mortality, monitoring of body composition, and perhaps selection of highly valuable sows. Maybe I said that already. So we looked at the data on the body condition score, and we also did pose estimation because lameness was the other area that we were looking at. And this was our publication. And here you can see we use the depth images. Oh, that's going to be hard to see. Okay, this is using a deep neural network. And can you pause that for a second? Yeah. Can we remove this one?
Yeah.
This part here? So what we wanted to do is not just individually, we wanted to be able to measure sows walking through in a normal pace as they would. They're very seldom will you see sows walking individually. So there are, right now we can measure up to 3 sows at one time. Thank you. Okay, can we go back? Thanks, Gabrielle. You knew you'd be needed. Okay, so what we did is we identified different locators on the sow. These are anatomical locations. And actually, Isabella Condota, her work showed areas. She identified areas of the sow and broke it down into 4 areas. We decided we wanted to look at location. And this is the last rib. And in this area here, not only did we identify, but we also predicted where it would be on the next step. So the variation at the last rib was the largest variation. And that makes sense because the last rib is not a joint, right? We have the movement of the head, the flexion of the neck, the shoulders, the hips, and the tail. So there were 2 areas where it was very wide, where the variation was wide, and that was at the last rib and at the tail. And that really depended on the sow. And if you think about it, if you watch a sow, I mean, they walk like models, right? They got some hip. They walk like Brazilian women. They got some hip. Okay, you can play it. Thank you. Okay, so it's a 3D camera. This was using the RealSense. So we use a deep neural network to automatically estimate the pose. And you can see that the dots are predicting where the joints are. And that's not different from what Tawana's doing now with LEAP. Here we have one sow. This is using wire mesh. Stephen, our student, put that together, and non-computer vision people love that wireframe. And here we go. We have 2 sows. Same thing. We're able to track the sows. So that's what caught the university's attention and why we started Motion Grazer. Next slide, please. Oh. So ultimately, I mentioned to you one location. This is the hips. This is the last rib. Ultimately, what we want to do is we'd love to do the entire topology. Wouldn't that be cool? A mesh of the entire sow, just like you would the topology of a landscape of the mountains. Next slide. But the other aspect of this is that there's an opportunity for interface. Remember I showed you that slide where a couple people picked up on the fact that the X didn't look like the other ones? Well, when we share this, I don't know if you can see this from where you're sitting, but when we share this image, the interface, now the farmers and the people working in the barn say, oh, she's too thin. Whereas on the 2D and even in real life, they may not pick up on it. But this gives them, that depth image gives them an interface. And that, I believe, is very important. Next slide, please. So we were talking a little bit about increasing sow mortality. If we think about it, we were taking subjective information and putting it against quantitative information. Our farmers make their decisions based on these productivity indexes. And yet we were giving them subjective information. So wouldn't it be cool if our work now becomes part of these key productive indicators? The work that you're doing is part of that. Next. I think it flicks down a little bit. But I just want to give a little shout out to our team at Michigan State. We have a precision livestock group. We're sponsored by USDA on a couple of grants. And we did put together, last year, we put together a precision livestock virtual field day for farmers and non-computer people, just to give them an idea of it. And then we also have a precision livestock farming webinar series. So if you're interested in computer vision and you want to hear what other people are doing, this is a really good webinar series. And you're welcome to join us on that. The link is, I don't know.
How often is it?
It's once a month. Yeah. Last 2 days ago, we had invited Matthew Benon, and his work was on tracking goats. Before that, it was Thomas Banhazi from Australia, who has been looking at top-down weight estimations. He's been doing it for 20 years. Prior to that, we had, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she is building avatars to detect lameness. So she's pulled all kinds of information off Google and has made for zoo animals and predicting lameness based on walking patterns. But all of those presentations are in our website in 2022. Okay, next one. This is a slide I shared with veterinarians because I showed them poop. And in fact, it was Zhao was talking about particles as well, classifying particles. And what this is, just the classifier, this is whether it's corn or fiber. So this is the endpoint, right? If veterinarians knew how many pieces of corn are in the manure, maybe that would help them with their decisions on ketosis. Maybe there has to be something different. And this is individual. This isn't, you see this, you pick it up, well, not that you pick up the manure, but you probably see it, but you don't know which cow it belongs to. And so where's the value in that? So I find that really, I find it really, really valuable. So the last I want to talk a little bit about is data rights, transparency, and traceability. So this is a little bit that's talking about blockchain, but it's a pervading issue in production. So that's the idea, is that we're able to trace the pigs, but if we're able to trace the pigs, we're able to trace the pigs. There's other people who want to know that. Okay, next slide. I mentioned to you earlier that there was a group that was purchased by Merck that also bought Allflex. And so we have the sensor applications that you're building right now, but in order to have a value proposition, you need a market access. And whether that you're going to build the market access or there's someone with already has a platform is going to utilize that market access. And then it brings it together in a premium package. The difference is that they have intellectual property, the larger companies, whereas most of us in universities were encouraged not to have intellectual property. We're encouraged to publish. So therein lies the fact. By the way, I have 2 patents on the sim kit, and each of those is considered publication by my university. So it's something to think about. Next one. Here, even, I mean, not even, but here at USP, you have people who are looking on the business model and a case study in the livestock industry. Next slide. So what do we need to do? We need data storage to move along. I think that there's going to be an entire opportunity there, just like, you're too young, but web design was the thing in the 80s, and data storage is going to be the thing, I believe. Legal and social models for who owns the data. We're collecting data from farms. We asked the farms had to sign off on it, but I'm not really comfortable with that. I mean, it's their sows. Who owns the data? And then interdisciplinary input. So between the developers, the engineers, developers, and us as domain experts. My son is in his 5th year of engineering. He tells me he doesn't need me. He's so arrogant. He's lovely and arrogant. Next slide, please. So intellectual property is really that unique value proposition. And if you talk to the business model people, they will say, what's your value proposition? What are you going to bring to the table? Next one. So I wanted to share with you, this is the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. This is in the Adobe or in the file that you will have access to. And this is what Michigan did. I'm not proposing what someone else should do. So there's an idea, there's research, there's invention. Some of you may be at to the point of invention. Some of you may be at the point of evaluation. Then there's translational research. And so there's a whole area at Michigan State that works on translational research, which just means taking it out of the lab and putting it into the field. There may be an existing company, it may be transferred into an existing company, as we saw with Merck, or the university may encourage you to have a startup. And there are grants for startups. There's federal grants, the STTR grants. There's opportunities for seed money. Then there's angel investors and venture capital, and they really do kind of roll like that. Next slide. So there's the universities, at least the foundation university, will offer pre-startup support. So if they think that you have an idea, some ideas are more favorable. If you don't have to go through regulatory, it's a little more favorable than those that do. And then there's the startup resourcing. We had 2 people who talked us through how to set up a company. We had lawyers in place. We had the patent lawyers in place. And that's all part of the startup resourcing. And then there's startup funding. You get to the part of the seed money. And then if you're showing a value proposition, that's when others, angel investors or venture capital, will then give you an opportunity. And then you get booted out. You're on your own. But the university maintains the royalties. I was at a dinner with the president of the university, and he's standing, he's talking out of the side of his mouth, and he says, "So what's this going to be worth to the university?" I said, "Millions." Of course, I'd had 2 glasses of wine. As I said, only about 5% will actually make it, but it was a lot of fun. And I think that's it. Yeah. So I believe, from going back to my welfare perspective, I believe that precision livestock will provide prosperity for all. It'll provide prosperity for the producer, for the animal, and ultimately the consumer as well. So with that, I thank you for your time. Marcello and I, we have to leave. Isn't that handy? And because we're catching a flight. You can send me an email at gemus@msu.edu. It's spelled like genus, only with an M. gemus@msu, which stands for Michigan State University.edu. I'd be happy to take your message. Or, but yeah, well, and it turns. It turns. So thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Really impressive. And I just want to make sure that you're officially invited to be part of our Center of Excellence. We're going to be negotiating that. I had the pleasure, Madonna was my very first student when I was on faculty for 10 years in Michigan State. And I'm delighted to see how far you move on that and the brilliant ideas. Mike, I have one question.
Sure.
The big underground map, how long does it take to go through that map?
Yeah, okay. Our startup was 2 years ago. It'll be 3 years this October.
Okay.
Yeah, but before that, it was easily a year before that.
Good.
Yeah.
What I feel is that we could learn tremendously from you, and I'm really serious about spending time with you in Michigan to get a better understanding of that.
Yeah.
What time is it now? I just don't want to.
It's 1:28.
I have one quick question, maybe. One quick question?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, thank you for lunch.
It was my pleasure.
Do you know if you have any sort of research about graphene uses in RFID technologies, embedded in pigs, to use like trackers and things like that?
Yeah. So RFID is very, very difficult. We talked a little bit about it at the workshop. It's just that to me, the problem with RFID is one pig at a time. And even the long range RFID, it's still not very precise. And if we're going to make this work, we have to have precise, one animal, during that activity. I wish there was more. There's ultra wideband that shows some promise, but apparently it's very expensive and it kind of dropped off for a while. There is tags that are called Hogmax, and Raphael has examples of them in their lab. The Hogmax, though, you're really training the computer, so the computer has to see the animal enough times that it then recognizes it. Because unlike a license plate, so OCR, your license plate, it's always in the same direction. Unless you flip your car, it's always in the same direction. So over time, the computer recognizes the tag. It wouldn't work for our system because the sow is only going through once. Yeah. Identification, first one to the trough, man. You've got a heck of a value proposition. Yeah.
And I'm really grateful to Raphael and Luciano, because we've been entering this area with Gabriel and now one and Dennis. And our goal is to really advance on that. And I'm really serious about this issue of our Center of Excellence and bring your expertise. And the next workshop we're going to be organizing is the workshop on intellectual property. What I understand is that we limit our ability to cooperate because we don't do a good job on intellectual property. And once you get it resolved, I think open doors for people to do. And
there's pluses and minuses because I'm hamstringed. We've advanced in our work, but I can't publish it, right? So you have to have an agreement with your institution on what you're doing. Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that Tawan has also been taking pictures from above. There's a lot of things that I'm so here that you're doing. I have no idea. Then I just want to make sure that
Yeah, that's it. I'm not doing anything else.
good.
No, that's not true. I wouldn't be your student
No.
if I wasn't doing something
No,
else.
absolutely.
Yeah. No. I'm actually. Gabrielle heard my blah 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 ranting on this, but I want to expand ground truth. That's the reason why I'm part of the computer vision network, is to test if we have actual ground truth.
I don't think I'll keep you much longer, but I will tell you, for someone that works as a mentor, this is a really real gift to have you
Yeah.
back. I mean, I haven't seen Madonna for 19 years. 19 years, and we
Just on Zoom.
yeah, just on Zoom, and I think we need to let you go. If not, you're going to be late.
Yep.
See,
Yep.
Marcela, to you too, Marcela too.